Start the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I do like one agenda at meetings. So a little bit of background. I guess two things for me. One, why do we try to accommodate filming? I think it's two reasons for me. One, it's the direct revenue. When a Girl on a Train filmed here, it was $120,000, something like that in revenue. So it really adds up. Secondly, I think it gives people in Irvington the pride that their neighborhood was in shows and things like that. I get people all the time asking me if I saw Irvington in this and everything like that. So I think that's kind of a two-pronged thing, and we want to try to be accommodating to the companies that request it. We found that for the most part, it's usually larger companies, and they're usually fairly willing to accommodate our requests. So that's kind of the big picture. This particular location where you guys are filming now, beyond filming, is a super hot button in the town because the owner has continued to have multiple different types of commercial activity, overnight stays, and frankly, it's been a thorn in this board side, in the building department side, and especially the neighbor side. So I think you guys kind of walked a little bit into a hornet's nest, probably without knowing it. I think if you had been in just about any other neighborhood, you probably wouldn't be sitting here. One of the unfortunate things over the summer is we typically only have one board meeting per month. So what happens with most of the filming requests are they're kind of approved by the board in consultation with the chief and with the village administration, and then we officially approve them at the next meeting. I think we've had maybe two other special meetings like this since I was on the board for filming permits. This one is because the last film shoot, I personally got probably a half dozen complaints about the way it was completed. I think some of it that happened, the fact that you couldn't park everything at IC because it was a voting day, that the police on site said it was fine to use some of the parking, like the permit parking, which was not in the original request. So I think that a lot of things spiraled out, and then with the background of, again, if this was in some other part of Irvington, someone might have said, hey, what happened? We said, yeah, there's a lot of weird things going on, but it seems to always be, Murphy's Law thing with this one property. I was saying to Larry before this, I think if you guys hadn't already shot there, probably already established a lot of film and a lot of hours, I wouldn't have even entertained this. I would have just said, sorry, find another town for this, or find somewhere else in our town, preferably. But because you have already invested time, I wanted to give you the courtesy of presenting. I think that the way our permitting works is the board can override the start and ending times. I think. But it ended up starting even earlier. And obviously there was parking not just all on site as originally proposed in the application. So I think those are all kind of big picture background items for you guys.
I think there's more, Brian, if I could kick in, because
please.
I mean, there was generally noise beyond, way before the initial start was intended in the neighborhood. So people were trying to get ready for work, for school, and there was a lot of disruption at 6:30 and beyond. But more than that, even the next, we had photographs from the next door neighbor across the street, which shows that cars or vehicles had been parked in their front lawn, and they complained pretty loudly about the vehicles turning in the driveway continually during the course of the day. So to me, this is beyond just happenstance and Murphy's Law. This happens to be a little bit of entitlement on the part of the crews working there, that they don't have that to take over someone's driveway for random use or to park on their lawn. Even if it's the side of the road, it's not a legal parking spot to begin with. And secondly, these things like this for the neighbors, they should be compensated for use of their property if that's what it's going to be. You can't just assume that vehicles can just park anywhere along the side of the road. In fact, as Brian pointed out, the agreement was there would be no on-road parking. Everything was going to be off the road. So once the issue with Immaculate Conception occurred, you know, at that point, you still didn't have any right to park anywhere on the road, much less in front of someone's house on their lawn. So, you know, I'm just really annoyed. I personally don't really want to approve this myself either. You know, I've had to change a personal schedule to come in here to be at this meeting so that there'd be 4 of us here. But, you know, I'm finding it really hard not to understand totally and agree with the neighbors that this is out of control. It's not like, and I'll finish with this thought, it's not like, how do I say this? I'm going to try to say it's not like, you know, it's accidental in a sense. It's almost like a sense of entitlement by the crew that has nothing to do with any sorts of politeness or generosity to the neighborhood who is allowing you to film there. So I find that to be a real problem. And I'm done with that.
I want to hear what everyone else has to say.
Well, I would just, in terms of clarifying some facts, what I was confused about, maybe I thought I was straight on it now I'm confused again, but the vehicles that were parked that are in the picture from the Sykes, I don't think those are in front of the Sykes' house. I think those are on the commuter parking spaces.
Right, but
That's the law that we have.
they sent us pictures of damage from vehicles parking on their front lawn.
Okay, so I see 2 pictures, but I wasn't looking
No, you
at any
didn't see the
damage.
other
So
pictures.
that's yet a
It's from
second.
the last meeting, it's from the last meeting.
Oh, that's the other one.
Correspondence for the
Oh,
last
okay,
meeting.
okay. So this is the parking is not on Clifton, it's on Hudson, but the damage is from this last filming that they did.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and that's so that there were vehicles parked or turned around or came in and clarify
Parked
that.
and also
Okay.
parked along Clifton, so.
All right, I'm not in charge of who says what when, so I don't know, whatever, however you want it to handle. I just want to get all the facts straight
Oh, I just
before.
wanted to clarify that we own 3 Clifton Place and 40 Ardsley Avenue West, which we've called 4 Clifton Place, which is the lot that we bought next door from the Browns to keep it from being developed. It's basically a garden space for us, but it's still our yard.
Okay.
That's where the cars are parked.
Yes,
Across from that, on
Yes.
Ardsley Avenue West. Okay.
but on
No,
Clifton.
No,
On
still on Clifton.
Yes.
Did you want to say anything?
I was going to say, I would like to hear what the terms of the permit are, what they're applying for. We're really in the dark because I don't believe that we got any notice, at least in the neighborhood, as to what their proposal is. I saw your email as to what's proposed for the future filming, but if we could get a better sense of, we have a chance to comment, it would be appreciated.
Sure. You guys maybe want to give us the details of, I mean, we have your letter.
Which,
I mean-
that's what was circulated, their letter.
That's the first time the request is coming to you?
Correct.
Yeah.
So,
That was, I circulated that to you yesterday, correct?
yesterday, yes. So there's 5 days, 10 days setup? I mean, if you could summarize, because I don't have the letter, I don't have the copy with me. Maybe-
We'll let them
maybe
outline
you
what they're
guys could
looking
just
for.
summarize it.
I do have an
You have
excellent
to, you
airport.
really need to
Can
come
you,
up here so
yeah,
you can
you
hear
have to come
better.
up to the
but-
I mean,
microphone,
it's a public
sorry.
hearing, I don't know if the public knows, I mean, I could read the letter into the record, but I would rather.
No,
you
it's
guys-
attached to the agenda.
So,
Good. Just, yeah.
this-
go
Just
ahead.
maybe some details of what you guys are proposing, times.
And who you are.
Hi,
That's good, that's good.
I'm David Velasco. I'm the location manager on the show. Michael DeRoker, my assistant manager, who you know very well, works with me. And I'm sorry to hear about some of the issues that have come up. You know, it's something that we obviously do our best to try to avoid whenever we're in a in terms of this final round, this is our last couple of days of filming at this home. It boils down to basically 3 days of filming. As noted in the letter, there are a couple of days of prep beforehand and then a couple of days afterward each time for us to wrap out the location. But the big activity is on the shoot days, which is the first coming up. I don't have it in front of me. The second, and then after that are 2 days of filming, which actually might be pared down to 1. They're trying to figure that out right now, but worst case scenario would be 2 consecutive days of filming with prep on the front end, and then that same week, all boiled into that 1 week block. Prep on the front end, yes.
October 10th and 11th.
Yes, and then a wrap out right afterward. Our plan has always been to try to minimize any kind of impact in the neighborhood. I'm sorry to hear about the issues with the crew cars. That is something that we constantly are fighting with some of our crew. You know, you unfortunately to try to over-communicate to everyone, please do not park in the neighborhood, please park off-site. We have, I believe it's 90 North Broadway is the lot which we've utilized in the past for the crew to use. We also have the churches we've been using for catering and for our truck parking. In terms of the noise issues and that sort of thing, I've already had conversations with my producers and our Teamster captain and basically reiterated that we really cannot be having anybody show up before 7 a.m., I believe is the earliest typically that anybody's allowed to do any activity in the neighborhood. All trucking has to happen after that hour. All activity has to happen after that hour. One thing that I propose...
Just a clarification, 7 a.m. is actually a special consideration to you guys. It's
Okay.
normally 8 a.m.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, just want to make sure you realize that the law doesn't actually allow it in the base permit.
Okay. Yeah. One thing that I noted in the letter as well, and in my communications, our communications with the town, in fact, we encourage it when we have police officers on scene with us throughout the day to basically help spread people out, make sure they're not doing what they're not supposed to be doing. Our staff is always on set as well, so in the event there's an issue that comes up with a neighbor or whatnot, they can just come onto the location and ask for someone from the locations department or ask to speak to a representative. My staff is always there, and they will gladly go and address whatever issues are going on in the neighborhood.
Maybe what you should be, sorry, keep interrupting, because I know you're talking about the plan. When you put the notification letter on their doorstep or on their mailbox, wherever it goes, put a cell phone contact number of the manager on site for the...
Yeah, we do have like our general office, well, I shouldn't say a general office number, it's a direct number, it's a direct number to our coordinator, Shannon, in our office, who monitors the voicemail, and she's the one that's the keeper of the log, so that she knows who's working what shift, where, at what location. So that number's a direct line to our body, who basically calls those hours and says, you need to speak to so-and-so, they live here, please deal with it, and if we need to involve anyone else, we do.
Are they there during all hours of the filming?
It's, yeah, basically,
Until 10 or 11 at night?
we always have a representative from my department on set from the moment somebody steps on to the property.
No, I don't mean on set, answering the phone that you put out publicly as the contact number.
Yeah, it's basically a number that's tied into her cell phone, so, I mean, technically, yes, if someone calls at 2:30 in the morning, she will get the message. She may not answer right away, but there would be no cause for that because we typically operate normal, whatever our typical hours have been, like 7 in the morning or 8 in the morning until whatever hour in the evening. But it is accessible, and on top of that, like, we're always keeping, a monitored log of, like, who's calling in and what complaints or issues come up whenever we're on location. Mm-hmm.
Can I ask how many other times you've filmed at this location? Roughly.
It's been about 6 days filming.
Rather than
And
6
work on
days.
it, yes.
Okay. And have you had other complaints from those other days? Has there been any other issues on those other days?
The days of 2 weeks ago in mid-September?
No, I'm talking about
I'm sorry.
not this last time when they feel that there was some extraordinary circumstances that didn't allow them to park where they might normally have
No,
parked
we were out of town for the summer.
for all the other films.
For the other ones, so. You would have to ask our neighbor who'd had a quintuple bypass, or the other one who had double hip removals, or the ones with toddlers on the street trying to walk on, the bike, so, yeah, we were out of town.
And I understand that the notification that was given to neighbors, which are required under our permitting, was a very short notice. I believe they were given it the day before. And I'm not sure if our permitting spells out how early
It
it
doesn't
has to
spell it
be.
out, but we
But for
request it.
courtesy, I would
Yeah.
expect that would be done a lot sooner.
Okay. Case, there was some sort of scheduling issue where we weren't even sure. We've been running into issues with the weather lately, rain, and, yeah. Yeah, so there's all sorts of, because we're a union crew, there's considerations about you can't have crew outside when there's lightning. You can't have certain equipment running when there's lightning. So because of weather issues, we, at certain points, probably weren't even going to shoot at the house, but at the last or soon to last minute, we're given the final word that, you better we had to pull the trigger and move forward with the actual shooting that was going to happen. Moving forward, I would say that, yeah, we'll, no matter what, regardless, do a better job of over-communicating to everyone exactly, you know, dates and times and that sort of
In
thing.
the case of that, you could have given a notification letter multiple days in advance with a note that if the weather's whatever, the shoot will be canceled. These people would have, you know, had time to reorganize their schedule with doctors, with kids, school schedule, whatever it is they may have. To be false alarm, they would have at least had the courtesy to actually be able to do something.
Yeah, I agree, and like I said, moving forward, we definitely will make a point of over-communicating to everyone notices and things of that sort relating to the neighborhood, and I definitely would love to be able to have local police with us the duration of the time that we're there, just to make sure that, you know, nobody shows up earlier than they're supposed to, no one's doing anything they're not supposed to be, landing a vehicle somewhere that's not supposed to go. The crew knows not to, like, go and, like, plant themselves in the neighborhood. Sometimes someone will show up to do a delivery, drop something off, and we'll try to sweep them out as quickly as possible, like, you know, you really got to get out of here. But obviously, there have been instances where people just have shown up and have decided, and it's sometimes a little difficult because we go to the crew and say, hey, whoever's parked a vehicle on whatever street it needs to go, and there have been times where, from what I've been told, it's been like other people in, I think, having to do with the college across the street that, for whatever reason, and then leave later on. But again, if we have, you know, and I welcome the assistance of the authorities, because God knows it's great to have somebody in uniform who's basically there to say, hey, you know what, no, you've got to move, because that gives it a lot more weight as well, and I'm all for that. And obviously, we would incur the cost of all of that labor.
So, just a quick aside to the chief, so how are the hours set up?
Well, and what I'm looking now, I'm trying to question what Tuesday's hours are, because they're showing on this 7 a.m. to 8 a.m.
Yeah, I think they meant PM.
PM.
That's what I'm hoping it is.
Yeah.
So 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on the 2nd, and then on the other dates it'd be 8 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Are you including the prep dates?
To me,
as
the
well?
prep date, I mean, to me, whether the cameras are rolling or not, to me, it's, they're all
Those are the dates that actually
Right,
filming. Now, if
exactly
you
right.
want to
To
see
me-
it
to
longer
me,
than
it's-
that,
and you have trucks, it's, to me, I don't care if there's
that's
cameras out or
fine.
not, you know, so, to me,
We
that's.
haven't- we haven't required them
Right,
for prep.
because it's, I think we
That's
don't
what you
typically
want,
have that
we
much
can
kind of
provide
prep.
it, yeah.
Because to me, it's, you know, again, if there are trucks coming in and out, they're parking and all that kind of, that's what I'm worried about.
Sure.
If they're filming or not, it's almost a moot point to me.
Yeah, I was going to ask about those prep days. It seems like there's a lot happening on what you call a prep day. To you, it's prep. To neighbors, it's
No, yeah.
trucks and
Sure.
people and stuff.
Yeah.
Same thing as filming.
Yeah, it's, yes, is the short answer. It's not the full crew, it's the art department set dressing crew. Those are the guys that come into the home and basically, I know it sounds crazy, but this is, they come in and, hey, great space, we're gonna take all the furniture out, now we're gonna put all our own furniture in, and we're gonna hang this and hang that and get it all set up. It's like interior decorating / moving all in one in one day. And, you know, they move pretty quickly. I think Jerry starts around 7 a.m. is when his guys start, and they're usually done by 2, 3, although we still have people on, you know, tweaking and dealing with last-minute stuff on set. So it's less people in that respect compared to, like, the shooting crew, but yes, it's activity throughout the day from, like, 7 a.m. until sometime in the afternoon.
The prep date, is that October 1st, Monday?
Yes, it is.
And the times you're going to need on that day?
I would say probably starting at 7 a.m. Until, say, 5 p.m. to play it safe.
Isn't that the holiday? No, that's not the holiday. That's
No.
I think the 8th is
No, the 8th is a holiday, Columbus Day. And then on the 10th and the 11th, you need a prep day on the 9th,
yes.
And the 8th.
8th and 9th.
Yeah, we put in for the 8th and 9th. We're waiting to see if they actually do need those 2 full days. It could just be the one day,
The 10th and
but just to cover ourselves, I said, let's just ask for the 8th as
So
well.
the 8th and 9th are prep days,
Mhm.
and then the shooting is 10 and 11.
Yes,
And then on the 13th, you're gonna have a cleanup day?
yes,
And you'll need manpower for that too.
Yeah.
And the hours on those prep days and cleanup days are gonna be?
I generally always blanket it as 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., and depending on what work they're doing, they sometimes finish, I know one day they would finish at like 2 or 3, so it doesn't mean they'll go all the way to 5, but I just like to buffer that in.
I'd
just in
like
case.
to meet with you later just to get some contact information approved, obviously, and then we'll go forward with making the schedule.
Sure.
So not to interrupt the forward motion of this, but David, you know, when I think of what your job is, I don't know much about this industry, but there are so many people and so many times, day after day after day, in many communities that you do this. Now, you made a nice statement saying you make an extra point of telling this neighborhood what was happening, but it seems like, isn't that what your protocol would be all the time? With all the redundancies and all the people, I'm surprised it fell apart. How did it happen that all this wasn't known and done? I mean,
I think just to this one last time that we were there, it was sort of a perfect storm of events with the construction, the train station, all the parking that's been taken for that. There was also the starting of the school year for Mercy College. And it just seemed that day, everybody just descended onto the location. Now, I know that also, the other days that we were shooting, there were some of the tennis people would come and park on Clifton.
that happens all the time.
Happens all the time. So some of the cars that were there were tennis people. Some of the cars that came were Mercy College people. I'm sure there were some rogue couple of crew, most of our crew parking has been going, you know, if any of the prep crew guys come in their own car because they're bringing stuff with them, they'll go into the property and park up on the grass of his property at 55 Hudson Road West's property, right? So I think this particular last time, it just was, everybody was sort of descending on that area, and the construction was at sort of, just was a lot of the parking was gone, and we had also requested from the officers to use those 6 spots for a truck. So it just kind of...
So you asked that at the last minute, and the police said okay.
Right.
So that wasn't part of the plan.
Right. That was sort of, that was one of the things that was requested from our Teamster captain to make that sort of backing up issue, because we didn't want to bring in a truck and have to back it into the driveway, and it became an issue. We didn't want to hold traffic up. So we said, okay, well, maybe if we could get a couple of spots by the yellow tiger stripe there on the top of the hill, it would alleviate any sort of traffic that might happen in the earlier part of the day when people are going to the train station because of the construction. It was all just crazy.
And are you anticipating that happening again?
We
That particular issue with the truck parking that's not on the permit right now?
No, we're not. We're not going to do that. We can't.
Yeah, I mean, our
But that means that there'll be the traffic issues that you were trying to avoid?
Well, so if we have an officer, and we can, usually what'll happen on the prep days is there's one truck that comes in, which is a set dressing truck. It comes in, and what happens, it'll have to pull up, and then it backs into the driveway, so it can get back out, right? So that takes two minutes to do. But when it was coming and going, it was, when we first got there, it was sort of determined that if we could park on the tiger stripes, and they're bigger trucks, so we wanted to, so Chief worked with us to give us an extra couple
All
of
right,
spots.
all that, I hear all that, but again, I think of all the great number of people that are part of your employees, your group. It seems like you built in redundancy for those kinds of things. So you have extra people to deal with that, or you think ahead, or you realize this was happening and you plan ahead for those things.
Yeah, I mean, to also piggyback on what he said, the other thing is, yes, we do have people and those redundancies built in, but the twofold problem we ran into that last time was just the overwhelming amount of stuff that we had to deal with, because it was the election day. It impacted where our trucks normally would go, and then having to scramble to figure that out. So like those bodies that would help with those redundancies suddenly are spread thin, because now we're trying to figure out base camp trucking and crew parking and all of that because of these issues. And on top of the fact that, you know, each episode is, I believe it's like a 9-day episodic shoot. We have other locations with other issues like this spread out among other towns and townships, whether it's Yonkers or Ardsley or even back in the
But
city.
everybody knew it was election day a year ahead of time.
Right,
So-
well, unfortunately, we didn't know till like, when did the church tell
The
us?
church had given us permission to park,
Yeah,
and then rescinded it.
yeah, like, which suddenly was like a scramble for us to suddenly figure out, okay, what are we gonna do? So that was how that all came about. It was just, like he said, a perfect storm of events.
So did cars turn around in the driveway of the neighbors and actually go on their lawn?
I have to say that I did not witness anybody parking in anybody's property other than, not our crew. There might have been students, yes. There might have been tennis pros or whoever that go there. I can't say. I don't believe it was our crew because our prep crew goes into his property and parks on his hill, which is, you know, that's a whole other issue, but that's what we've been dealing with every time. And it was only this last time when school started, the construction was at its height, the parking was at a minimum, and that's when they,
Other people, cars that you couldn't tell from other
Yeah.
sources caused the problems for Maya or the other properties.
I mean, we can't-
I can respond to that.
Okay, maybe she has more information.
Yeah, so
But
again, I
I
didn't-
understand your point of view, and
yeah.
I know you don't have ill will here. It's not
No,
your
no.
best interest for your business.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I just feel like there's so many employees, and to be a professional company, these are things that, you know, we need to ask about because we're concerned about our neighbors.
Sure, and
So-
we're willing to, and, you know, we've discussed it many times, we're willing to do whatever you ask us to do to rectify the situation.
But one thing I just want to add also, like being a location manager and being in charge of the locations department
Yeah.
that oversees
Good
all the
job.
locations, I literally never park on set. Even when I've gone to this house, Martin, whatever, the driveway around back, like I make a point of like leading by example. And if I see a crew person pull up and they attempt to do something like that, park on a lawn or something and walk onto set, I'm like, no. Turn around, go back, you got an attachment, you know the map because it gets emailed to you every day, what we're doing, where we're going to be, it's got directions, X, Y, and Z, go park there, be there. So if we physically see people doing anything out of sorts, we make a point of saying like, no, you've got to get back in your vehicle and go where you're supposed to go to avoid issues like this. And if someone does see somebody from our crew doing something they're not supposed to be doing, by all means, yes, come find us.
Are they
and let us know.
identified by some way, their car?
Sometimes the good ones will, if they're like dropping something off or have to run in or deal with whatever on location, will leave their phone number and some sort of a crew tag on the dash. Others, you know, it's like dealing with kids at times. Like they'll just go off and do whatever, and we'll call on the walkie. Like if we've noticed like there's an extra amount of vehicles on the street, or we notice something's not kosher, if there are crew vehicles or whatever's going on out on the street, please move it now. You know, if the car's parked somewhere, we call out the plate number. If we think it's one of ours, please move the vehicle now. And usually people will cooperate and do what they're supposed to. Other people, it goes in one ear out the
So
other.
you can choose your employees and let them go if
I
they're-
unfortunately don't hire the crew in
Somebody-
church.
somebody
Yeah,
does in
no,
your
I
company.
know.
Yeah.
But again, this is where if we have extra police assistance on the day, that helps because then I can point to an officer and be like, you're going to get towed, or you're going to get a ticket, or you're going to get whatever, and that is the extra motivator usually for people to, you know, actually move their vehicle and deal with stuff the way they're supposed to. And again, if we have assistance on set, extra assistance, then that's great, because then we can just cone off areas. I mean, we do that all the time as well, if the town will allow it. Like, we'll just cone off areas of the curb lane and say, like, nobody is allowed to, like, be here, and that will give extra incentive for people to know visually, like, you can't even...
If they are Mercy students or whatever is allowed as parking, sometimes neighbors have visitors and they actually do want
Right.
a car there or a construction truck for a kitchen remodeling or whatever. So, you know, it's not, you know, unintended consequences. But
Sure.
I don't know, Brian, if you want Maya to be able to respond.
I can quickly clarify that. And I'm very sympathetic to you. I've worked in film. My crew, my sister is a director on TV, and I understand. But as the mayor said, you're walking into a bit of a hotbed of 3 years of bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, love weddings, film shoots, commercial shoots. So, this, it's not personal. As far as I'm on the Ardsley Country Club tennis team, and the ladies know where to park, but you don't because you've never been here, because it's a strip of lawn, and the first 12 to 18 inches are city property, as a sidewalk would be, and then beyond that is technically our lawn. So the tennis players park half on, half off the street. But you don't play tennis, so you wouldn't know how the tennis ladies park. And on the second day of the shoot, it was a heavy downpouring of. So I empathize with your crew, but there's literally no way that it was tennis ladies. So by parking entirely on the lawn, which would be rational to make room for traffic, you're actually creating huge deep ruts and track marks, which we're going to have to fill in or possibly put boulders in. So it's just this ongoing onslaught of for-profit activity that have happened. Look, I lived in LA. Larry Ellison's daughter was my neighbor on a private drive, and she had film shoots constantly because it was her vacation home. So I moved here and I was like, great, I can't wait for Village Life. And then Louise had a music video shot to 1 in the morning. I waited 2 years before filing a single complaint. And now, anytime, I'm just all done, basically.
It's understandable.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I'd like to make a few comments too. So I live in the neighborhood. I'm Deb Hargraves. I live in this section. This is a neighbor and a friend of mine. I also happen to be on the Architectural Review Board, and I'm used to having out get a building permit. And I'm sitting here, frankly, in disbelief that this is the process by which this village goes through for a film permit. I know there are different permits, but at the same time, I'm looking at a letter, which I guess is what I'm being heard is the application for the filming. There's no date on it. The way it reads, it's hard to follow how many days you're filming. You film for 2 days, but you set up on another day. You got to break down on the third day. The start time is 7 a.m. on some days, 8 a.m. on other times. You don't put the end time. You then say no total amount of time filming, but from my count, it looks like it's 10 days of shooting you're asking for. We're here on a Friday. The filming is starting on Monday. I can't imagine your company has already just today suddenly decided you're going to film and you can get all these trucks in. I don't know if those are the trucks that belong to you that are already up at Immaculate Conception, but why we're here on a Friday when the shooting is going to start on a Monday is beside me. Usually my experience in this village is when you apply for a permit, you have to file weeks ahead of time. There's specific application that has start times and end times. You have to attach a drawing. I mean, if the application is here, I'd love to see it, but if it is, why isn't our neighbors being notified when the application is being filed so they also have an opportunity to show up?
I don't think that Architectural Review Board or Planning Board is the same as a filming permit.
It is to our neighbors, though. This is the point that we're trying to make, the impact and the
I get it, but we've
cost.
probably had 80 film shoots in the last year, and we've had 2 complaints. So I think that it's a little bit apples to oranges comparing.
It's still a legal document,
But there
isn't
is
it?
an
In some essence, it's a
application.
permit.
Yes, there
It
is
is
an
a
application.
permit.
Yes.
But the point is this consideration, and we've said this before, in connection with private homes where you're parking on the side street. It's not like the girl on the train where we're filming down by the tunnel. This should have a heightened sensitivity.
That closed all Station Road for a week, so
And
that impacted.
But did you
people.
tell them the Friday before the Monday, all the neighbors? That's what I'm struggling with here.
Oh, I get that.
This is
I
frustration.
don't like the timing either. If we weren't worried that, if this was a small shoot or something, I think we probably wouldn't have entertained it. But we do like the extra revenue, so we try to accommodate shoots. I think it's ridiculous. I think the one good thing is that they have 2 different shoots, and they're really going all in. So if they don't do the first one right, we're going to just cancel the second one. But I do think we probably have to start saying, I think the other problem with the summer meetings is that we don't have time to have the regular meetings, so we always have to have, typically what happens is Larry will talk to the location manager and get all that information. Most municipalities, it's not approved by the Board of Trustees, it's done just by the administration. So, we could do that, we were talking about turning it over to that before this whole thing happened.
Which Brian, I think is fine. I think it's fine to go through the village, but I would assume that if it goes through the village, there'd be a proper notification
There's
to the.
not usually notifications, it's not typical for
No,
filming.
we're following what the law is right now, so it's, the law lays out what the requirements are. The fact that there's not a 2-week requirement for a permit.
And my other comment that again surprises me, and it does surprise me that you can come in here on a Friday and get the film permit and be ready by Monday when so much is involved in filming, obviously, but somebody has more notice than this. is that, our neighbors would appreciate ID. Put a placard in the car if you're associated with the film. Put an ID around your neck so she knows that it's not somebody that's just randomly like sitting in a car outside of her house. There's a lot of things we could do to make our neighbor, more content.
And I think the Mercy College section now, they're not allowed to park there either.
They are not. They are not. And so the Mercy College piece also, I think, is a red herring, that I don't think these are the students. I think that we all know that what happens is when a film permit is issued, there's disruption to the neighborhood. There's a flow that starts to happen where one car can't park where they ordinarily would park, so they move around to another spot at a part, this neighborhood at least, that we have one neighbor who's inconvenienced. My last comment, and I'll let the others speak, is that this is a good neighbor. This is somebody who moved here in June of 2015. This family in our neighborhood. They bought a home that is not easy to sell. We all know it's a beautiful, huge, historic home in a beautiful neighborhood, and she is the only one that's being impacted by the commercial activity at 2 New Eats, and I find it really, really disappointing. This is a family who sends children to school in our neighborhood, that she has stayed quiet for over a year or 2 years. She talked to all of us very, quietly saying, does this happen often? What's going on at New Eats? We all said, don't worry, he's trying to sell his house, and when he sells the house, it's going to return to a residential property. Well, guess what? He didn't sell his house, so he's figured out a way to make money and still hold on to the house. And it is not fair. The only family that is being impacted is sitting right here, and it has to stop. And until it does stop, we're just going to keep coming to this board and ask you to seriously give her the neighborly consideration that we give everybody else in this village.
I would say that any other type of commercial activity, we've already, talked to our building department about, and the police department, so they know any other kind of activity happens there. I personally told Marty Dolan, but that he can't do that anymore. The film permits are, to me, slightly different. If they say everything's going to be contained in the house, everybody's going to be off the road, I find it very different than loud parties and things like that. When there's time limits, to me, this was a disaster because it spilled out onto the roads. They parked on lawns, all those things. And to be honest, they had already filmed once before. We didn't hear anything.
No.
Maybe it was because you were away. Maybe it was because it was fine. But to me, when it's if typically film shoots are, we've only had one other bad experience in my, since 2009.
Again, I respectfully disagree that when it's cumulative the way that it has been, and when you were looking at 10 days from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m., we cannot say that a film shoot is different. This is the last straw. This is 10 days, I don't know how many hours, but and the last comment, and I'll sit down because I know others want to speak, is, and my question is, who pays for the police coverage?
They do.
Okay.
And
Thank
who
you.
noticed, Ron Cherry noticed that the film shoot had water hooked up to a hydrant.
That was arranged, yeah, that
That
was
was
built through the
arranged.
water department.
Okay.
It wasn't necessarily pre-arranged, which they know about now, but there are times where various construction, or in this case filming, does need public water, and we attach a meter to the hydrant, and they pay for it.
And our film shoots are apprised of the school drop-off and pick-up schedule too, because Clifton is very narrow, and you have school buses from 2 separate school districts as well as Mercy College vans.
Right, I
As
mean,
well
it's
as
really,
small children on the street, so.
right.
That's why there
That-
shouldn't
that's
be
why-
any parking along Clifton.
And that's why we have the police out on site, to help.
Yeah, I had a
navigate
nice
that.
chat with him, and it was very much along the lines of hanging out with like a bro, and isn't this film shoot great? So, as long as, from my experience from various noise complaints and things, the police are lovely, but until there's a foot stepped out of line beyond the permit, they're not personal. You're
Well,
fine gentlemen,
I
and
think-
Ernie can only do so much.
If we go ahead and approve this, it's going to be very clear to the police. It's not going to be, if someone can't park, let's figure it out. No, if they can't park, then they have to go back to ICS and park there. There's no parking on the streets. It would have to be, if someone came at 6:59, we're going to shut the whole thing down, and it's over. To me, it would be that clear. To me, we don't typically have to be that strict, but because this is a bad actor's property, we have to be that strict this time. Typically, we like to try to accommodate, no, you're here 15 minutes early, don't worry about it. This would be, and again, I think the one hammer we do have is they need 2 different times. So if they screw this up, they've now invested all of this, and they can't finish their shoot, and they'll have to start over.
And does the code not say after one step out of bounds, there's an 18-month suspension?
It does not. It does not. It also doesn't have any kind of penalties.
If I may, your current law right now, it doesn't have any required notification, but it does have penalty clear that there is a if you will, a moratorium, for lack of a better term, on that particular property for any film shoots if they are found to be in violation of the code provisions that you do have. So I'll back up a second. I'm Kristen Wilson. I'm here representing APOA. And I'm happy I was able to make it on such short notice, and I understand that the village enjoys the additional money in your coffers from film shoots, but sometimes this just doesn't fit. This is a residential neighborhood, and what is being proposed just doesn't work here. Not only is this a 100% discretionary action on this board's agenda tonight, they're also asking for you to amend, or I guess get a variance to the hours that are permitted. So the few regulations you do have in your code, they haven't even complied with, and they're admitted that they have not complied in the past, and they're asking again, let us come early on school days, let us stay late on school days, during the weekdays, let us come on a holiday when people are home on Columbus Day. At what point does it stop? So I'm here on behalf of APOA saying, exercise your discretion and say no. They don't have a right to this permit. The impacted property owners have been good neighbors. And they've crossed the line now. And yes, it is cumulative. It's not always Universal Studios or film shoots, but there's only so many impacts the neighborhood can have. So you've 100% within your right to just say no. 100% in your right to say comply with what's in our code with the hours. You can restrict the hours even. You can say no to holidays when people are home. You can notified well in advance, not Friday afternoon before they're asking for 10 hours worth of overtime work for your probably fairly small police force to help control crew members. There are other notification procedures that are simple things to do, certainly for a company, I think it's Universal Studios, that's what your application says, that putting placards in cars, giving neighbors at least a week notice, knowing if there's big events going on at Mercy College on any of these days. Do you have any idea? Knowing if there's big events going on in the school days. Are they getting let out early because it's a Columbus Day weekend, the Friday before? Has there been any due diligence to see if they're the number of factors that made September so bad? Let's make sure that those factors aren't in place here. We don't have Election Day in October, but we have other things that could be going on. So maybe this is too much too soon. Maybe we need to take a step back and look to see what would be reasonable in terms of when a film shoot could take place in a small residential neighborhood. This isn't downtown Irvington where 7 a.m. start may have no consequence. Or downtown, fair enough, downtown White Plains. And I would say that other codes are done, that these types of permits are approved administratively, but there are certainly restrictions, only 3 shoots per year in residential neighborhoods. A lot of municipalities, Terrytown's code has some restrictions like that. White Plains, a much bigger city, has a lot of restrictions. So those are things that perhaps at this point enough agita has occurred that maybe it's time for this board to just say no, which is 100% within your right.
So one thing I was going to say is that looking at, some material was accepted in the administrative office at 9/26/18. So I'm not sure, but I know that we first heard about this, at the beginning of this week, maybe Tuesday?
The permit came in on Tuesday.
Yeah.
It was circulated on Wednesday, and
So the 9/26 was from a previous, the indemnity stuff that was...
I don't know. The permit walked in here on Tuesday, absolutely. And
yeah. So we were trying to meet, and this is the soonest we can meet, so just with everyone's schedule. But the thing I was going to say is I'm looking at the permit, and what it doesn't include, which I think is an obvious lack, is it only shows the actual day of filming. It doesn't show any setup days in the permit, which without the cover letter narrative, one wouldn't necessarily assume anything was happening different. So I think internally, within our own office, every day is accounted for, not just the day that the cameras are actually rolling.
We were working entirely off of the letter, to be honest with you. The form, there was just several mistakes in it. We went by the letter.
But I think for everyone else, like the police chief was having a hard time interpreting the letter, the neighbors having a hard time. So I think that we really should be sure that the application is updated to be proper. If it comes in and it doesn't have the right information, you should just tell them to come back and resubmit it and start the clock over. That's what happens in other, other boards and committees when the applications don't meet the standards that are needed. You basically say, resubmit and we'll start again.
Well, it puts me in a little bit of an interesting situation because the board has already said that they want to accommodate and encourage filming. So
yes, but we don't want to
balance
have
out, being practical with going by the letter of a form.
I understand that, but we're talking about having enough information. Until this cover letter came in and being shared with us, I don't know that we're aware of I can say that I was not aware of the extent of the number of days on site, so.
The letter and the form were delivered at the same time, so. Anyway, the point is we were working off the letter, which we felt was a very practical approach to dealing with it. We had some questions about it. Once those questions were answered, we circulated.
But everyone else has questions, so I'm saying that doesn't work, Larry.
Okay.
The rest of the community wants to have it explicit, and it makes it a pain in the ass. It makes someone take an extra 20 minutes to add the information, even if your office adds it and verifies it. I just think it needs to be done. I'm sorry to be poking at that, but anyone that was looking at this, we just saw what the chief was. We were trying to figure out what the hours were supposed to be for.
So for this next one, is it possible to start it, if we were going to approve it, instead of making it certainly, the 7 was something that we, whereas 8 would be a normal time.
I was going to say, what time is the bus?
Why not make it?
The Irvington school bus comes at 8:02 a.m. and there's an 8:02 a.m. train, so you'll have a ton of commuters, because I call the chief of police when I see all the speeders down
Make
Clifton.
8:30.
And, yeah, so between 8:02 and 8:15, it's highly trafficked.
Given the background, I'd like to suggest that if this board is to approve this, to consider approving it, that we change the start time
8:30.
for this one. And as Brian said, if this event on this day goes badly, absolutely, the expectation is that the next one would be canceled. I can't imagine. This is obviously not what the neighbors want. They would like this to stop now completely. But I would consider the start time was later, and a lot of these things that we brought up here are adhered to.
So Connie, the one thing was, are you talking about only the shoot day, or are you talking about the 2 days of set up, tear down?
All the days.
I think I agree with Brian.
Yeah, I just want to be sure we're clear on that. So.
That nothing happens.
Before 8:30, in my opinion.
I mean, couple of things. The reason that we do have the earlier start times is because what happens is, for instance, if we're shooting on a Tuesday or Wednesday and our start time is 7:30 or 8 a.m., we need time before that to bring the people onto the set, bring the equipment onto the set, get it going, and then when we wrap that day, the end time of that day, when we're here, affects the start time of the next day. So it basically just goes that way day to day, and that's just how the schedule is structured. I will say that one thing that, this is the first that we are more than happy to figure out restitution to any damage done to any property or anything like that. We're more than happy to do that. I'm sorry that this has happened. We try to make a point of when these things come up, to address them, and I'm more than happy to go back to my production and arrange for repairs or damage or anything like that on our end. If there's a way we can figure out, ultimately it is your choice, yes, but if there's a way to figure out where, say on the prep days, when we're prepping the location, we can start, yes, a little bit later, let's say 8:30, but if on the shoot days, at least on those days, we can still adhere to an earlier start, that just helps us schedule-wise with the remaining days left in the week to come with our schedule. One last thing I also just want to mention, and I'm going to pick my words carefully because I'm trying to be diplomatic. This location's been really hard for us. We're dealing with.
Yeah, you've been pretty dull indeed.
Yeah. So, I mean, I will not take up too much time. I can tell you stories of us going there, and suddenly there's a family of 30 people there. Martin.
Say that again?
Yeah, like Martin, hey, we're coming at 9:30 with the director, the producer, Laura Linney, who's a producer, and suddenly, like, I can't go in the house because all of a sudden there's this party going on that we were never told about. So there's this constant...
Terrible.
I get it, I understand,
So
yeah.
terrible.
I-
I'm normally the most laid-back person you will ever. I'd be out there with like hot chocolate for the whole crew.
Seriously, this
Normally,
village
but-
should be embarrassed.
I gotta tell you, Marty has embarrassed us,
Embarrassed.
but I told the building department, find him, shut him down, however we can. I actually need you to call us every time there's a party there.
As
Such,
Mr.
it's such a
Shaw
burden on her, though.
We have
It
the
was-
police
I
still
do
live,
too.
but you can't always see.
I go on regular loops around with my cell phone, but since he built the illegal.
But that's easy for us to figure out.
We
I
tried,
can't
Brian,
quite.
we tried. We've already
Not-
contacted the
short of
building
a-
department.
Short of a
No
drone,
answer.
so.
You know.
I mean, again, and no offense to the town, but really for us, like, we can't wait to be done there and just
Well,
go, so...
I mean, I've told my board, this is the last thing I'd ever consider approving there until there's new ownership, because it's just absurd.
The other thing I would suggest too, because this happens, we do it all the time in the city, in the 5 boroughs, and I think it's what you brought up earlier about some of the municipalities up here. We have hot zones in New York, where certain neighborhoods, like after a while, because so many people shoot there, it's hot zones. Suddenly we're told, for the next 6 months, there's a moratorium on Williamsburg, Tribeca, whatever part of town, you guys can't shoot here because people get overwhelmed. I mean, that famous case is Girls was all over Greenpoint, Brooklyn for so long. They finally were like, no, for 6 months you can't shoot from here to here and here to here. And I offer that, for future productions, because it's unfortunate, we come into a neighborhood and we really do try to like adhere and do our best, and sometimes it is a little bit like herding cats. I'm not excusing other people's behavior, but it can be difficult trying to like make sure that everyone's adhering to what needs to happen. But whatever we can do to make it seamless and easier for everyone, we're all for it. And and I'm sorry that it's
I'd
come
like
to
to
this.
say that there are a lot of neighborhoods, there are a lot of places in Irvington that won't have this background for that particular
Just that
place.
one street and that one
It is
house.
just that one street,
I've
it's
got to
one person. really.
interrupt for a minute to say
It's
that.
not I don't mean the neighborhood, I mean that location. So but I hate to punish
So we're gonna have a vote.
the bad actor. I mean,
Heavy restrictions?
somewhat bad actor, but not the bad actor. So,
Connie,
I don't know where to go with that.
Mark's got a,
Okay, go. Yeah, you gotta go.
5 minutes, so.
Okay, right. So we need to, can you propose a...
can I, you want me to summarize
On
that?
what?
I mean, as best I can,
With
so.
what change?
Okay, so let me run through it.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So, let me run through the days and the hours, just to
Yeah.
make sure that it's clear. Prep day of October 1st, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Right? I mean, that's where we
Prep
landed,
day.
right? Okay. Shooting day of October 2nd, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. is what you've been asked, and I think, right?
One shooting day, yeah.
Then there's a cleanup day, which I think are similar hours as the prep days. 8:30 to 5. So that's October 3rd.
Third.
Then moving on to the following week, 2 prep days, which I think you said you may or may not use, but 2 prep days, October 8th and 9th. I'm sorry, 9th.
Yeah.
8th and 9th. Sorry, yeah,
8:30 to 5 as well.
8th and 9th, 8:30 to 5. 2 shooting days of October 10th and 11th.
Which might be one.
Permit application says 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., is that correct?
Yeah, that's the approximate,
So that's a later shooting
We
day.
make that one 8:30 just to get the buses out of there?
Sure.
It's the 10th and the 11th, 8:30 a.m.
To 10 p.m.
And for the 7 a.m. start dates, just, I can text you the time, but it's basically 7:45 to 8:15 and 2:45 to 3:15.
Right, David, can we ask that you're aware of those times, even if you're starting at 7, to be aware?
So far, it's just one day, that's Tuesday.
That just those particular times.
Are you
for the
done with
buses
the
and
schedule?
Almost.
Yeah, and if we could have police
Okay,
assistance
Larry's
with
not
us.
finished.
All right, okay, so then there's a cleanup day of October 13th, which would be 8:30 to 5.
That's a Friday.
The 12th, I think, is actually. So
Oh, I'm sorry, 12.
And even if we
Sorry.
say, if we
That might
say
be-
approve, what we're not approving is if there's a problem on the first
So,
day.
so a
Or
couple
the
things.
second
First of
day.
all, there's a requirement for the ability to contact someone on site in your notification, and obviously our personnel would know that. Whether it's indirect through your office, that's fine, but the notification needs to be earlier. I think you've probably satisfied the notification, but I think it needs to be done before Monday. No
Well,
part.
certainly a notification on the second week, this week,
Right.
coming up.
Right, but the main parties that would need to be notified are here, so that's the only reason I'm saying. But in any case, no parking on the street, and all of the days of filming operation from October 8th to October 12th are subject to revocation pending any issues with the first set of filming dates. I mean, I'll word that better in a resolution, but I think that's
Can
the
you
idea.
define street, whether it's Hudson Road West and Clifton, or
Any street parking.
any street?
Any street parking.
For their crew, with their employees, it's nothing to do with Mercy
All their
College or
parking has to
anybody
be
else, right?
has to either be on the site of the property or
In a
at
staging
some other
area.
private location.
Right.
So I'm okay with general outline of that, but I'm not sure why we're giving Columbus Day when they don't even know if they need it, and it is a holiday. So
As long as,
I would suggest that gets struck.
The Columbus Day holiday?
The Monday?
Yeah, Monday the 8th. That would be a work day, well, that's a setup day, the 8th.
That's not a shoot day, that's just the art guys coming in and moving furniture,
Yeah,
basically, in
so
the
we do it
house.
all on Tuesday.
I don't know if that's, again, I'm not in a
we're gonna
position to
have-
say,
I know, but
Yeah.
you're not in a position to say. I'm saying that we shouldn't approve this on a holiday.
As a prep day,
That's
It's
the
still a
8th.
holiday.
I know.
There's less traffic, it could be potentially less.
In some ways, it's easier.
Yeah, but the
It's
neighbors
not a
are...
noisy
Except
thing,
it's loud, yeah.
it's a traffic thing, it's
How
not a
can you
noise
say it's
thing.
not a noisy thing?
I don't know,
That's what I'm
is it a noisy thing? The
it's,
prep day?
it's the set dressers, yeah, just like literally moving the furniture.
There- She's fine with that.
The one truck.
prove it.
One truck.
I'm telling you, the last production, please,
I was-
please,
I
last
gotta tell you,
production.
if I see
I don't want
Dylan
to shut
DeWitt
these guys
anything,
down. I don't
I'm
want
throwing
to.
the round file drawer.
Under condition that at least presence will be there, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right,
And
That is
the police will be there.
The only issue I have is on Monday, it's gonna be, I got Tuesday covered yet, but now I didn't know about Monday, so I gotta try to find somebody today for Monday.
So
I know
we're
what's
straining
going
the
on this
police
weekend, it's
department.
gonna be somewhat difficult in all the utility work that we're doing, so.
Yes, there's a
I'll
ton
see,
of
I'll see if I can comply with Monday, but Monday's a tough day for us.
Okay.
I just wanna make that clear, I will do our best to film them.
So we're going to allow activity without police coverage on Monday? That seems counterproductive.
I don't think Con Edison is gonna
I
work
don't think
on
he can
Monday.
answer sitting here whether he
Yeah.
can get
Okay,
someone
all right.
on site,
We-
so that's.
Right, I won't know until I get out of here to see if I
Well,
can find.
I can't, I just, I'm not happy with going forward on the holiday. I think there's too many rough edges.
I'm talking about this Monday, not the 8th.
I'm done at the 8th.
That's different.
I actually think that could be a better day, because there's not the buses and all that stuff.
All right, so you're,
And so we propose,
as stated.
As
by-
outlined.
as outlined by Larry, which we'll write out and
Of course.
and circulate as well.
Yeah.
I think I'll take the leap of faith that we'll get someone covered on that Monday.
I'm gonna try.
Yeah.
I'll
And
advise.
especially during, we can find out the heaviest traffic times. If we have trouble, maybe we can, move people around too, like get the traffic officer over there or something. But yeah, so as revised for this permit, I'll make the motion. Definitely get a second.
A second.
All in favor? Aye.
I'm in favor.
Opposed?
Walk opposed.
Did you vote no? I'm sorry.
I voted no.
Okay.
Larry,
Thank
you were
Okay.
okay?
All right, so it carries. All right. Want to make a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Adjourn.
If I have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you for contacting me.